Hi guys, Tish here and welcome back to Auto Social UK. This is the Volkswagen Caddy California. It's Volkswagen's cheapest camper van. And I've actually been spending some very good time with the Caddy California. In fact, we've been to 4 countries in 4 days, travelled 1,000 miles, and I've driven this van for 25 hours. So, what do I think of the Volkswagen Caddy California? And is it good enough to sleep in? Is it good enough to sleep 2 people in? Because that's something that Johnny Smith didn't think was possible.
Width-wise, is this enough room for 2 people? Intimately, probably. Comfortably, for 1 person.
So if that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then this is the place to be. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. But first of all, let's cover some of the small things. Let's cover the external styling of the Caddy California, because I would say it's very subtle. There's one thing that I think this car or this van doesn't have, and that's the cool factor. In a way, there was tons of really cool vans which were at the camper festival, and we just felt a little bit left out with our Caddy. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means that this is very practical, and it also goes well undetected as a camper van. Not everyone will be knowing that you're sleeping in the back of your vehicle, and I see that as a plus point. Now, from the external, it's very much a Volkswagen, of course. It has those classic Caddy styling. There's nothing really to make it particularly special. You've got the Volkswagen badge at the front. You've got that new styling, including the bottom diffuser here, which of course has the gaps in it to cool the engine. The wheels are very subtle. I personally really would spend a bit of money upgrading those wheels. The model that I have here actually has the California Plus package, and what that means is it brings you a few optional extras which make living with it as a camper just a little bit easier, and that includes sliding doors on both the passenger and the driver's side, so getting in and out of the camper van is really easy. You also get tinted windows as standard, which is brilliant, because if you really cannot be bothered to be putting up those darkened window blinds, then it doesn't really matter, because you can't exactly see directly into the camper anyway. Personality really is so important for any California camper. So for the California Caddy, you do have these California badges. However, I don't really think they look that nice. To be honest, I think you could find some much better decals. And if I was spending time with this camper, that's something that I would consider. Before I show you how easy it is to set up the camping situation in the back of the Caddy, let me show you what's in the boot already. So inside the boot of the Caddy California, you will, of course, see your fold-out bed at the top, and you do have a couple of straps as well to keep that in place. But there are some other interesting items in the back here. So you've got a storage compartment down here, and that has your seats and your table. So really handy. They're easy to fold out and then fold back in, and they slot nicely underneath the bed. You've also got your window covers, which are brilliant for keeping the light out, and I really found these so simple to use. So they're literally just magnetic, and you just pop them onto the windows and then pop nicely under there. As you can see, there is loads and loads of storage in this boot. Even with the bed, even with this storage compartment, which I'll talk about in a second, you could easily fit plenty of storage items into the back there while still being able to see out of the rear window. You've also got these little kind of storage sections on the side windows, which I love. They keep out people from being able to see inside the Caddy, but also you can store a ton of items inside these. So I kept all of my toiletries in those bags, and then they were easily accessible. Here we have a cooker. So this pulls out, and then you have a full cooker, which is brilliant. You've also got a nice little preparation section here as well, and the gas from the cooker is fed through underneath the bed, which I'll show you in a moment. It's all tucked in there very neatly, doesn't take up hardly any space. And then this actually locks outwards, and you can click these here and it folds back away again. Underneath, you've got an extra storage section, somewhere to put your cutlery, and then behind here you've got some water caddy, you've also got a kettle, and you've got some like cooking utensils down there as well. Very, very handy. What would have been really nice is if this was a fridge, but unfortunately here is the issue with the Caddy California compared to some other campers, and that's the fact that it doesn't get a leisure battery. Meaning, if you did want to run any items, you're going to need to either run them via the car, or you can get one of these, which I made sure that I brought along. And this is kind of your plug connector, which you plug in at campsites. Of course, you do need to check that the campsite does have an electrical pitch, and if it does, then you can use this, and you can charge things like a mini fridge, or perhaps you'd want to charge your phones or anything else which needs a little bit of power. However, if you don't have one of those, then that does mean that you're going to be relying on the Caddy's battery, and here's where me and Amelia become a little bit unstuck. Because we decided one evening after our 8-hour drive that it would be okay to charge both of our mobile phones. So we sat in the car for a bit, for around 20 minutes whilst we were charging our phones, and then I got a notification from the car that the battery was flat and then it wouldn't turn on, which is a real shame. And you do have to be aware of this when you're spending time with the Caddy, that you can't just run all of your electric off of the battery and expect it not to go flat. I mean, I did know it would eventually go flat, but I thought 20 minutes of charging would be okay, but clearly not. So just before I show you how easy it is to set up this bed, let's jump in and look at the interior space before it's set up. When you're not using the Caddy as a camper van, it actually functions really well as a 5-seater car. Inside here, I've got loads and loads of room. I've got plenty of legroom, and I've got loads of headroom. Absolutely tons, even though I've got this panoramic sunroof. You also get nice little options, like you've got these pull-out little tray tables, and you've also got a couple of USB-C charge ports and a 3-pin charger, although I do think some of those are an option. You could comfortably sit 3 adults side by side on these rear seats. It is a little bit of a shame that they haven't got any middle seat child seats, because in things like the Touran or the Charan, you used to be able to put 3 child seats side by side, and it was really functional for a lot of people. But let's face it, that's not too much of an issue when you're going to be using this as a camper van. So, without further ado, let's see how quickly I can turn the Caddy California into a camper. So the first thing you're going to want to do is pull the seats forward. So, by pulling on this bottom strap, you can pull the seats forward like that, and they split in a 60-40 split. You can also pull this red strap upwards, and that pulls the seats all the way forward. So if you did want to use this as having some extra storage in the back, you could. And you can also gain access to the gas tank in the back there as well for your cooking utensils. So it makes it really, really easy to access. But for putting the bed up, we're simply going to have it in its lower position. Once you've gone ahead and you put those seats forward, then all you have to do is unlock the strap here, and then that will release the bed, and then we're going to go round and pull it from the other side. Now, when pulling out the bed, it's always going to be easier done with 2 people, but you simply have to pull this part forward and bring it up to kind of like a triangle. And then you'll actually find there's some feet underneath. So if you go around both sides and make sure those feet are unhooked, as you can see, this is why it's easier to have somebody else on the other side, but it's really not that difficult at all. And then Once you're into that position, you will then realise, like I have, that the seats need to go forward because of course this needs to come all the way up. So what we now need to do is just move the front seats. You need to begin by sliding the seats forward, and you're also going to want them to come up as far as they can go upwards because then that will put them the most out of the way. And then just quickly twist them forward a little bit, that should be enough. And then at this point, all you need to do is slot the legs there. It is that simple. And that is your bed set up. What did that take? That probably took all of about 60 seconds to get set up. And let me show you what the space is like once you're inside it. That is the bed all set up. And as you can see, I'm around 5'5", and I can actually sit up straight, and of course my head does touch the ceiling, but it isn't too bad at all. It gives you plenty of space to be able to move around. If I lie downwards with my head at the very top, because this is probably where you'd have your cushions, I've still got a good kind of 2 foot at the end of the bed, so it could easily fit somebody who was 7 foot. It's not particularly wide, and that is the only issue, and that's the only thing that I think lets it down over something like a tent box, which I've tested recently. The tent box is slightly wider, so sleeping somebody side by side may be a bit of a struggle, but me and Amelia slept for 2 days in here and we were perfectly comfortable. The way we found the most comfortable was to have me laying up this way and Amelia was the other way around, so topping and tailing. But if you was with somebody who, of course, you was in a relationship with and not just friends, you could easily lay side by side, and you probably are going to want to when it gets a little bit colder as well. But yeah, in general, I am so impressed with the amount of space that you get back here and just how easy that was to set up. There's no real thrills when it comes to the interior of the California Caddy. It's all pretty much very functional as you'd expect. You get this kind of textured dashboard which is a mix of plastics, but it's all very well soundproofed in here, and I like the way that they've got a light roof because then it opens everything up. You get cloth seats, they're very, very comfortable. We did around 25 hours driving in this and I was comfortable the entire time. It is a bit of a shame that you can't have leather as an option or a leather effect, because I do find that this material does mark, especially if you spend time with girls, because we do get makeup on things, and when it is on this kind of material, you'll see that even just rubbing your arms against it, it does mark the seat slightly. So you'll see that being worn down quite quickly. It's nothing that a valet couldn't fix, but it would be able to be wiped clean if it was leather. This centre console down the centre is really functional because you've got the new drive selector, which is very, very minimal. It takes up hardly any space, and you've also got an automatic handbrake as well, so there's no need for the handbrake, leaving you with loads of space down the centre of here. It does upset me very slightly that there isn't anywhere which your phone will pop neatly into. It kind of is a little bit too big for the front part, and of course it's a little bit too big for this middle part as well, which is a shame. Inside the armrest you get your standard Volkswagen kind of storage section in there. That's plenty enough to put a mobile phone. You get 2 USB-C ports up the front, and you've also got a 12-volt charger, which very strangely for this vehicle is actually a physical cigarette lighter. I haven't seen one of those in years. I can assume that the reason for that is when you're camping, if you wanted to start a fire and you didn't have a lighter, that you could use this cigarette lighter. But it's a little bit strange. I haven't seen one in about 20 years. It brings me back to my childhood. Because of the panoramic sunroof, there's so much light inside this cabin, and it does make it feel very spacious, and it's actually quite a nice place to spend time. It makes a change to be driving a vehicle where the actual driving part is not the most important part. Of course, you want the Caddy California to be nice and comfortable. You want it to have a powerful enough engine, but it's probably not the be all or end all. You're probably not expecting something with pin sharp handling, which you're going to be able to dart around the back roads, because of course, that's not what it was designed to do. You have the option of either having an automatic or a manual, and you can choose between diesel or petrol. I still find that diesel is best suited to a vehicle like this, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of long motorway driving. And that's the one that I have. So I have got the 2-litre diesel, and that's paired together with an automatic gearbox. And that gives me 122 brake horsepower. If you go for the manual diesel, then you get 102 brake horsepower, so just a little bit less. I definitely would stretch to get the automatic if you can, just because when you're doing long journeys, it takes a little bit of the stress out of driving. I've never found it to be lacking in power. Of course, being a diesel, it does need a little bit of oomph to get going, but once you are going, it's always been very, very capable. You get cruise control as standard, but if you wanted again to make it even easier to drive, you can add adaptive cruise control, and that will cost you around £700. This is probably something that I'd be looking to add, just because I really like using adaptive cruise control, and I definitely missed it on those 1,000 miles that I covered on the motorway. The petrol model that you can get is a 1.5 litre TSI, and that gives you 114 brake horsepower, regardless of if you go for the manual or if you go for the automatic. Both engines are actually pretty frugal. You're going to see up to 60 miles per gallon if you go for the manual diesel, or you're going to see around 40 miles per gallon if you go for the petrol. When it comes to the Caddy California, it's never going to be the most interesting or the best looking camper van that you can buy from Volkswagen. But what it is it's the cheapest. For under £40,000, you can have a very practical 5-seater car, which is also a camper van. And I think that offers some serious enjoyment. In fact, to start with, I was a little bit dubious whether I'd enjoy this vehicle. But the more time that I've spent with it, the more time I've spent sleeping in the back, I've realised that it really does have all those classic traits of all the best Volkswagen campers. But what is for certain is it doesn't quite have the flair that some of the others do. But what do you think? Do you think you'd go for a Caddy California? Or do you think you'd opt for, say, a Volkswagen Golf with a tent box on top? Let me know in the comments down below. I really hope you've enjoyed this video today, guys. If you have, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more from me on Auto Social UK, then you know what to do. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Until next time, bye. One minute and 12 seconds to get everything folded away and the seats back into the driving position. How insane is that?